Hello and welcome to the First and 10 podcast. I'm your host, Patrick Feltz, here in Indianapolis, Indiana. Today, we begin our first preseason episode of the First and 10. We're having an actual season this year, we think. We think? Is it too close to call? Should I declare it? I'm declaring it. We're having an actual season. Knock on wood. Please get vaccinated. Please continue to be smart about things. But if things hold up, we're having a real football season. And we're going to preview it. We're going to preview the whole thing. So for those unfamiliar, and this is our first episode, so I think most of you will be unfamiliar with what the setup is going to be. We're going to do two teams an episode. For the most part, we're going to be previewing teams who make sense to be previewed together, and few teams make more sense than the two will be put together than the two will be previewing today. So without further ado, the first preseason preview of the 2021 college football season here on August 1st, 2021. It'll be Michigan and Michigan State. We'll do Michigan in the first half of the episode and Michigan State in the second half of the episode. And joining me for all 7 of our preview episodes, 14, but 14 teams are previewing 7 episodes. Joining me for episode 1 and every other episode, it's Reid Murray. What's going on, Reid?
Not too much, Patrick. Just happy to be back on the show. Happy to be producing some more content.
Oh, totally. I mean, we're knocking on the door of the season. There will be college football games played later this month, week 0. Nebraska and Illinois. We are like 3 weeks away from Nebraska playing Illinois. And I, for one, cannot wait. I know that's not a great matchup, but it's football, and we're getting close. So let's talk about a football team. Last year, calling them a football team might have been a little bit of a stretch. The Michigan Wolverines, 2-4 a season ago, 6th in the Big Ten East. Final game of the season against the rival Ohio State was canceled due to COVID issues within the Michigan program. I know that a lot of people on the internet had their own speculations as to why that game was canceled. I'm not here to speculate. I'm not here to contribute to that speculation, but it was canceled. So Michigan this year, big year for Jim Harbaugh, who got a contract extension in the offseason, but it was kind of a soft extension. He got his salary reduced. That was one thing. And I think the biggest thing is that it makes it easier for Michigan to fire him. But he still did get an extension. So he could be around for a while, but in theory, he could be fired even easier. So I think the biggest storyline going into this Michigan season after a really disappointing 2020 campaign, and I know it's tough to draw too much from 2020, but 2020 Michigan, even if there was no COVID and it was a normal start to the season and they, played Labor Day weekend through Thanksgiving, I think it would have looked similar, and I think it would have been bad. That team just was not very good. They had serious issues on the defensive side of the ball. Don Brown, the defensive coordinator, was fired. Joe Milton, the quarterback, who looked so great in that first game against Minnesota, and a guy who I remember after I watched every single snap of his before the season last year, every college snap he had taken, I said, this guy's got a lot of potential, but he's going to look rough early on. And rough he did look in a lot of those games, especially in those losses for Michigan. He was not very good. And he got benched against Rutgers in a win, I believe. Cade McNamara took over. But Joe Milton's gone. He's at Tennessee. A lot of transfers out of this Michigan program this year. That was one of the storylines the offseason. But they do retain a couple guys. Hassan Haskins is still around at running back. Aiden Hutchinson on the defensive end spot. Reid, what is, beyond the coaching question, what is your biggest question mark for Michigan this season? What do you need to see from Michigan this year?
I need to see something from their defense because lots of changes are being made to the defense. They have a new defensive coordinator, Mike McDonald. They bring in 3 new assistants. So definitely lots could be changed from the defensive philosophy standpoint. But at the end of the day, the cornerbacks last season were far from impressive. And I think they're going to be starting the same cornerbacks this year. The defense is looking largely the same with a few departures, but I believe they return 8 starters. So pretty much the same. So I think it comes down to how do these coaching changes affect the product on the field?
Yeah, and my biggest issue with the Michigan defense last year, beyond just the cornerback and safety play being atrocious, was discipline. This team felt undisciplined. A lot of stupid mistakes, penalties, offsides, biting at pretty much anything, a lot of play actions. You go back and you watch that game against Indiana, Michael Penix Jr., I think on the first 3 possessions, he caught Michigan offsides just by clapping super loudly, just doing that about 5 different times. And the announcers, like at some point, they start going, "Oh, again, they jumped offsides on the clap." Like you think at some point they'd stop falling for it, but no. Yeah, discipline was an issue, and that's something that I think good coaching can fix. So that's a question for Mike Macdonald. Can they coach a little bit of discipline into this defense and into the corners to step up their game? Because this is a very talented roster. It's Michigan, just looking at recruiting rankings and all that, but they just couldn't put it all together last season. And I don't think the defense is going to get better. It should, in theory, but those defensive backs were just terrible last season. They were so bad. And they lose really their 2 best defensive players, or 2 of their 3, I guess. Aiden Hutchins is still around. No Cam McGrone and no Kwity Paye. And Kwity Paye, I think they really misused him. But that's a different issue, and I think the Colts have a better understanding of Kwity Paye's strengths and weaknesses. But no, I don't see this defense getting a whole lot better. Maybe they can be more disciplined, but what really has to happen is the corners and the safeties just have to be better, because if they're not, they are going to give up a lot of yards in a hurry. And that's exactly what they did last season. And they're lucky they didn't play Ohio State, because it would have been a bloodbath.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing Michigan needs is really a culture change, because Michigan is one of the most storied programs in this sport, and in recent years they've just become okay with being second best, or in last year's case, not even second best, near the bottom of the division.
In their own division.
Yeah. And not only were they not second best, they got embarrassed quite a few times. They lost to a Michigan State team in their second game in the Mel Tucker era, a team who had previously lost to Rutgers. They got the daylights blown out of them by a Wisconsin team who had an inexperienced quarterback in Graham Mertz. They nearly lost to Rutgers. They lost to a struggling Penn State team. Really not much from last season, other than that one Minnesota win, which was a solid win.
Mm-hmm. First loss to Indiana that one game in 30 years.
Yeah, other than that one game, there's really not a lot to look back on last season and say, this is something we did well. This is something we need to continue. And I think it starts with the defense, and it starts with the new defensive coordinator. But I mean, Mike Macdonald is a young guy. I don't know how much experience he's really got with culture changes, and I'm not sure if he'll be able to do it. I mean, that's the biggest thing Michigan needs, is they need to change their culture and no longer accept mediocrity, because they've been doing it for years now.
And the thing that I brought up earlier that I think is really the huge elephant in the room with Michigan is Jim Harbaugh. Do you think he makes it another season after this year?
I don't think they fire him after this year, because, I mean, they lost Kwity Paye last season. He was, I would say, their best player. They haven't got a great quarterback situation, in my opinion. I don't think they have a whole lot of stars on this team. They don't really have a guy like a Jabril Peppers, or some of these game-changing playmakers they've had in previous years. So I don't know that this year. I think this year there's not much of an expectation, so I don't think Harbaugh could disappoint too much. I mean, it's certainly possible if Michigan wins 4 or 5 games, then yeah, I think he's out the door. But I think if they have a 500 season, he'll stay for at least one more year, because it's not like they're expecting Michigan to beat Ohio State this season. It's not like they're expecting them to beat Penn State. This is not that year. But I think in 2 or 3 years, if he hasn't gotten a signature win, or I shouldn't say that, because he's had signature wins in the past. If he doesn't get Michigan back to where they were when they were consistently going 9-3, 10-2, if he doesn't get them back to, at the very least, that point, I think he's got to be gone.
I agree. I don't think this is going to be the year that Harbaugh gets fired, if he gets fired at all. I think they're at the very least going to wait a couple years until they can draw something out of the 2 big newcomers to this team, in my mind, which are 2 freshmen, Donovan Edwards, JJ McCarthy, running back, quarterback. McCarthy's a 5-star, and I believe Edwards is a 4-star. But ignoring the stars, I've watched the tape on these guys. I think McCarthy could be the quarterback that Michigan has been searching for, really, since Jim Harbaugh took over. I don't know the answer to that, because they've had so many other guys who everybody said, this guy's going to be the quarterback. It's going to be Joe Milton. It's going to be Shea Patterson. It's going to be whoever. But a guy who I do know is going to be good is Donovan Edwards. This guy is special. watched a lot of this guy, and it kind of went beyond me just wanting to get good knowledge on how good of a player he was, because he was really fun to watch. Uh, this guy's high school tape is something else. If you haven't had a chance to watch it, I would, because he was just absolutely dominant. Everybody in the country wanted him. I think he's going to be a great running back for Michigan. I don't know if he's going to play much this year. Hassan Haskins is going to be the guy, but Donovan Edwards someday is going to be an elite running back. Mark my words. Let's go through the schedule for Michigan. That's one thing we're going to do, is we're going to go through each of these teams' schedules. We're going to mark through the games, win, loss, and talk about some of the more important ones and things that we think should be mentioned alongside the game. So let's start week 1 for Michigan. They play on Saturday, noon kickoff, ESPN, against Western Michigan at home. You think they win this one, right?
I think it's really hard to say they would lose this one. As I don't have a ton of confidence in the team, but I think you got to mark them down for a win against Western Michigan.
Yeah, but week 2 is when it gets interesting. So we've both got them at 1-0. So week 2, they host the Washington Huskies, a team who I think is going to be a preseason top 15 team. I've already done my preseason top 25. Reid, I will send that to you later, because I'm sure you're interested. But and that will be on my Twitter account, to those of you who are curious at home. So the Washington Huskies are a team I think is going to be really good this season. I think they're the best team in the Pac-12 North. I know Phil Steele had them as his most improved, or his surprise team for 2021, and he's never been wrong with that one time. Legitimately, he's always right with his surprise team. Jimmy Lake going into his second year as the Washington head coach. The defense is going to be the strength of this team. Really, really solid unit, especially on the back end, kind of the opposite of Michigan. I think Washington wins this game. I know it's a home game for Michigan and all that, but Washington is really good, and Michigan is just going to be kind of okay to pretty good at best. Washington is going to be a very good team with a chance to win the Pac-12.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I got to go with Washington in this game. I mean, like I said, I think Michigan has potential this season, but I think it's going to take a few games. If they are going to be a much better team this year, I think it's going to take some games to get there. I think week 2 against a solid Huskies team, I can't see it happening. Got to go with Washington here.
Yeah, and even though they do have that home field advantage, Washington is just a better football team.
I agree.
And we do have a lot to see. We didn't see really much of them at all last year. They won the Pac-12 North. Obviously, they didn't play in the Pac-12 championship because of COVID, but this is a really good team. And I think that given a full season, a full training camp for Jimmy Lake's team, I think this is going to be a team that's going to make some noise in the Pac-12. All right, so week 3, Northern Illinois. I think they win this one. Northern Illinois was one time the powerhouse of the MAC with Jordan Lynch at quarterback, and nowadays they are one of the worst teams in the MAC. I don't see Michigan losing to one of the worst teams in the MAC. Maybe if they were playing a Ball State or a Kent State or a Toledo, I'd say, okay, maybe they can give them a game, but Northern Illinois, I don't see it.
One thing I'd say here, though, is look out for Rocky Lombardi. Last season, Lombardi had the game of his life against Michigan.
The
Transferred to NIU. He'll be getting to face Michigan one more time, so you never know.
Rocky Lombardi, Michigan killer.
Rocky Magic could be back.
Going for number 2 against the Michigan Wolverines. Imagine if that happened, by the way. Wouldn't that be something else? But
that'd be unbelievable.
Rocky Lombardi looking to get a second win over Michigan. Michigan probably is going to win that game, though.
Yeah, I don't think it'd be close. I got to go with Michigan win here.
Week number 4. So this is a game last year that was very good, actually. This is a great game. Rutgers and Michigan. This one's in the Big House this year. Last year, it was in Piscataway. Rutgers came very close to winning this game and probably should have, and kind of sort of choked it away. Big game from Cade McNamara in this one, who came in for Joe Milton after he got benched. So first, let's just say, you think they beat Rutgers, right?
I think so. I mean, you look at the game last year. Rutgers let McNamara do everything and anything he could want to do against them, and I think McNamara has a similar performance against Rutgers this year.
I think
assuming
so too.
He's still playing at that point.
Now let's talk about that. Let's talk about Cade McNamara. So here's a guy who comes in for Joe Milton in that Rutgers game, and is kind of expected to be the guy from there. I know a lot of people have talked about how great of a quarterback he is, and he's this high school legend in Vegas and the best quarterback in the state of Nevada ever, and all this and all that. Decommits from Notre Dame, commits to Michigan. So he was great in that Rutgers game, but then Not so much. So Reid, Cade McNamara, a little bit of a confusing player. Good, bad, otherwise. I think he's just kind of okay, maybe pretty good. He could be the starting quarterback of a good team, of a ranked team. Like he is not going to lose you a lot of games, but he's not going to win you a lot of games either. What do you think of Cade McNamara?
I agree. Yeah, he's not a real game-changing player. I would say he has good composure and decision-making. I like what I saw against him, especially in that Rutgers game. But he's just not the kind of guy who's going to electrify a team. He can't really throw the deep ball as well as you'd maybe hope he could. But he does get his passes off quickly. He's a good short-range passer. Great against a team like Rutgers or lower tier Big Ten teams like Maryland, Purdue, Illinois. He's great against them. So I think he's going to win them those games. And that's why I don't see Michigan dropping too many or really any games that they should be winning this season. I think any game where Michigan is the better team, they'll win, and where they're the worst team, they'll lose. I don't think there's going to be any sort of upsets on this Michigan schedule.
Yeah, so let's look at some of these Michigan games from last year, the Cade McNamara games. So just the Cade McNamara stat lines, and this shows you how much of a roller coaster it was for Michigan. So in a blowout win over Minnesota week 1, a ranked Minnesota team somehow, 49-24 win. He was 0 for 3. He kind of came in just because it was like, don't want to get our, superstar quarterback Joe Milton injured in garbage time, how the tables turn. So then a couple weeks later against a Wisconsin team coming off of COVID, Graham Mertz coming off of COVID, they lose 49-11, and McNamara comes in at the end of the game. He goes 4 for 7, 74 yards. Okay, so you can pretty much ignore those. Those are both garbage time. So he comes in for Joe Milton against Rutgers on the road. Joe Milton is benched, and Cade McNamara has a huge game. 27 for 36, 4 touchdowns, 260 yards. This is a great performance in a triple overtime win over Rutgers, 48-42. It took 3 overtimes for Rutgers, Michigan, and for Michigan to win, which is kind of insane when you think about it, and that shows you what kind of season it was for Michigan. But week 4, or his 4th game, excuse me, I'm just looking at his stat line here. Penn State, 27-17 loss. He was 12 for 25 for 91 yards and 0 touchdowns. So he was bad in that game. So really, in the only 2 games that you can take many conclusions from, he was great against Rutgers in a game that took 3 overtimes to win, and against a Penn State team that was 0-5 and reeling, he was terrible. So can't really draw too much from last season, but from what I saw, I think he can be a pretty good quarterback that, he's going to game manage. He doesn't have the ceiling of a guy like J.J. McCarthy or even of a guy like Joe Milton, but he's got a much higher floor than Joe Milton did. And I think he is the right choice for them over Milton, and Milton's obviously not with the program anymore. So, So going back to the schedule, though, we've got them at 3-1 after the Rutgers game. Then they go to Wisconsin. I don't see him coming out of Camp Randall alive.
Nope.
Me neither. All right. Yeah, so I think they get crushed at Wisconsin. At Nebraska, I think they win.
Totally. Michigan's totally the better team here. I can't see them losing this one.
Yeah, so we've got them at 4-2. Northwestern at home, I think they win.
That one's kind of a toss-up for me. I don't know if I trust Cade McNamara against the defense that's traditionally as solid as Northwestern. So that one's kind of a toss-up. I marked it as a toss-up loss, but it really wouldn't surprise me if they won that one either.
I'll mark it up a win. But I don't think it's a solid win. I don't know about Northwestern this year. We'll talk about them another week.
Yeah,
but
that one will be a dogfight for me.
Yeah, no, it's not going to be a fun game, but
probably going to be
even
similar
contest.
to the what was it, 10-3 Michigan Iowa game a couple of years ago. Got to be one of those Big Ten kind of low scoring dogfights.
Yeah, classic
Big Ten football.
Classic.
That's what you've come and watched this conference for.
An ugly game in the Big House. Anyway, so I've got them at 4-2, I believe, and you've got them at,
you've got them at 5-2. I've got them at 4-3.
Excuse me, you've got them at 4-3. I lost count. So I've got them at 5-2. You've got them at 4-3. At MSU,
I'd call them the better team. I don't see Michigan State pulling this one off.
I think so too. Even though MSU got them last year, I'll take Michigan. So I've got Michigan at 6 wins, 6-2.
Bold, I think I would call that bold. Yeah, I got them at 5-3 here.
Yeah, their schedule is very favorable in the first half.
Yeah, but it definitely starts getting hard in the end.
Yeah, and here's the fun part. Indiana at home. I'm going to chalk that up as a loss.
I think that's going to be a pretty big loss. I don't know that McNamara can handle Indiana's defense. I think
Yeah.
Penix, assuming he's healthy in that game, goes off. I think it'll be by a score of somewhere in the 20s, honestly.
Yeah, similar to last year, Indiana crushed them. That was the game where we thought the defensive backs were bad after what Michigan State did to them last year. Uh, but after the Indiana game, there was just no defending it, and there was no defending the Don Brown defense anymore. After that game, they were just terrible. Michael Penix just owned them. And assuming he's still healthy at this point in the season, I think it's going to be a similar story. So looking
I
at the next
agree.
game after that, at Penn State,
Doubt
I'll
it.
take Penn State here. Yeah.
Yeah, I got to go Penn State.
Yeah, even though it's traditionally a whiteout game, not a whiteout this year, I'm taking Penn State.
I mean, it's not like the crowd's going to not show up since it's
Oh
not
yeah, no,
the
it's
whiteout.
still Penn State,
Crowd is
Michigan.
going to be a
It's still a
factor.
big one, but
And Penn State's the better team, in my opinion. I think
Penn State,
whiteout or no
yeah,
whiteout, I think Penn State wins this one.
I agree. So the week after that is Maryland on the road. I might sound crazy, but I'm taking Maryland.
I mean, I see it. I chalked it up as a kind of ugly win for Michigan, but I wouldn't call you crazy for that one.
Yeah, because looking at what I had on the schedule so far, Michigan hadn't had a boneheaded result all season. I think they're due for one, and I think you could say the Northwestern game could potentially be that. I think they're going to beat Northwestern, but I think a 13-9 win or something over Northwestern could be that, or loss to Northwestern, so something like that could be the Michigan's annual stupid game. This is my stupid game of the year for Michigan. Michigan always has one game that you're like, did that just really happen? And I think it happens to Maryland. I think it ends up being a loss. Maryland is very talented. Last game of the season, Ohio State, automatic loss.
You see, I would say automatic loss, but here's my thing. You look at McNamara in the Rutgers game last season, and you look at all of his snaps. It was just he was laser focused in that game, just completion after completion. Rarely made mistakes against a poor Rutgers defense. I think Ohio State, their biggest question mark of the year is the secondary, and if that question mark doesn't have a good solution, McNamara can really go off against Ohio State. I don't think they end up winning, but I'm saying I'm worried because it's a rivalry game. Anything can happen in rivalry games. I have Ohio State winning closer than they should. I think Ohio State should beat the tar out of Michigan this year, but I don't think it happens. I think it'll actually be a close game.
I have Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave over combined 300 yards in this game.
I'm just saying, I think I wouldn't be surprised if it's a weird score like 42-35 or something closer than it should be.
I'll take Ohio State like 49-31. I don't know, but hey, you know Ohio State very well, so I'll trust your judgment.
Ohio State tends to. They haven't really done it in the Ryan Day era, but they tend to, like you said, Michigan has a game where you say this really just happened. Ohio State tends to have those games too. So I don't know. It's a rivalry game. There have been games in the past where Michigan has won when they shouldn't, or Michigan's kept it close when they shouldn't. I don't know. This could be another. This could be just like the what was it? The 2013 game where Michigan was, I believe they were 5-6 going into the game, and they it was a 1-point loss. It was a 42-41 loss for them, but they had no business competing as well as they did. I think they could do something similar this year.
Yeah, we'll see. Obviously, these two longtime rivals haven't played in 2 years, which feels absolutely wrong. But that's the biggest game of the season for Michigan and Ohio State every year. But this year, it's going to have even more meaning because they didn't play last year.
And let me just say, when it comes time for the week of that game, I'll probably change my mind and say, what was I thinking back then when I said McNamara can
I'll remind you of
do
this.
something against? Yeah, I'm probably going to change my mind because you think about it more. Ohio State tends to show up for that game more than they tend to get up more than Michigan does, or at least in recent years they do. So I don't know. My mind will probably change in the near future, but as of now, I'm saying I don't know. I'm a little worried. We'll see. I don't have total faith in the Ohio State secondary. Lots of questions to be asked of them. Who's going to play where? How well, a guy like Seven Banks is going to be. So we'll see. But as of now, who knows? Michigan can keep it close. Maybe even
I never
win.
thought I'd hear you say that.
Oh,
What?
come on. I'm fair. I hate
You're
Michigan, but
fair.
I'm fair to them.
You're fair. You're fair, but that's a little too nice.
You got to stay on your toes in situations like this. You always have to be when there's so much emotion on the line. You always got to be on your emotional toes.
Emotional toes. Not a terrible band name.
That would be a funny band name.
We are Emotional Toes, and this is our first song. So back to Michigan. I've got them at 6-6. I think 7-5 also realistic. They probably are going to beat Maryland. I just thought it was funny to say that they're not going to beat Maryland.
I wouldn't say that. I mean, I think Maryland. I
Maryland's a
have them
good
beating
team, but
Maryland,
it's
but
kind of
Maryland's a
funny.
solid team. Maryland's
Maryland's
solid.
good.
I
No,
think.
Maryland is very talented.
Mhm.
But are they going to beat Michigan? I don't know. I'm kind of waffling on that a little bit. I'm going to say Michigan wins 6.5 games.
Yeah.
I'm setting it 6.5 is about a good number for Michigan. Like Little
I mean,
Caesars
for me, I've
Bowl.
got them. I got prediction is 6-6, ceiling is 7-5, floor is 5-7. I don't really see them
Yeah,
having an uncharacteristic loss to a weird team like NIU or Western Michigan. Um, I also don't see them achieving great heights. I think they're pretty much within that near 500 range.
I'll say ceiling's 8-4. Ceiling is like a Las Vegas Bowl. I'll say. Floor is Little Caesars Bowl, Pinstripe Bowl, something like that.
I would say floor is just no bowl. They could go 5 and
Yeah,
7.
no, that's fair. But in terms of a bowl game, I would say is that. But
Okay, yeah.
no, it's entirely possible they don't go bowling. I think they probably will. But we'll see. This should be a really interesting year for Michigan. And we certainly do have a lot to be shown from this Michigan squad. There's a lot that needs to be proven from Jim Harbaugh and his staff. So next up, we're going to talk about MSU after a quick break.